Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our continuing work with glamour. In this case, there is a very strong glamour um, blanketing, I would say, the much of humanity, especially people who are on the ordinary wheel, as they say, turning clockwise. Um, this is the wheel of personality, and there is no knowledge of the soul, or at least only kind of again, blind belief. This is particularly acute at this time within the United States. Excuse me. And I'm calling it the glamour of blind emotional reaction to manipulative, conspiratorial thinking. A lot of words there, but I think you get the idea that people will believe anything. And because we have a problem with the mind advancing, they can justify on the slightest little distorted hint what it is they believe. There's enough logic in the mind so that it can be twisted around and a case can be made for these really crazy beliefs and, more importantly, the emotional reaction that goes with it, leading to um, separative and dangerous action on the physical plane, such as the uh, storming of in the United States, of the citadel of democracy, which is the legislative branch where the laws are made, the laws by which we live, imperfect as they are. So we have, but this extends to the world. It's what made Nazism possible, and fascism. Of course, fascism was a ancient Roman type of punitive relationship with the people. The certain guards, like religious police, but they weren't that. They carried these fasci. They had sticks to beat people. They even had axes if they were going to decide to put someone to death. It was a punishing kind of response to the people. And lately, um, fascism under the guidance or the, what should we say, very surreptitious, sneaky, surreptitious methods of the Black Lodge has reared its ugly head once again. We couldn't quite finish with it in the Second World War, and a lot of those people are back too, trying to make trying to do the job all over again, which means to thwart the emergence of the soul as we enter the Aquarian age, and basically do everything they can to delay the reappearance of the Christ, which they know is in process. So these are serious matters. We're dealing with a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of blindness, a lot of fanaticism. Of course, we do have one favorable, if we can last that long, one favorable cycle, namely that the sixth ray and the Piscean cycle are going out of incarnation pretty much by the end of this century. DK says they pretty much have to disappear until their next cycle, by the end of this century. And by the time the Aquarian age begins in earnest in 2117, we should have quite a new approach to human thinking, and the number of seventh ray souls that will have entered will be considerable and will help bring a degree of balance to a very unbalanced situation. Now, our reading, so we'll get into that meditation. Our reading has to do with the technique of the presence. We're preparing to learn about that. And there are processes and stages. Now, we're really dealing with a mixture of glamour and, to a certain extent, illusion caused by the inability of so many millions to use the mind properly, critically, exactingly, conscientiously. The mind just becomes the justifier of the ready emotions. So that's just a very early stage, but it still does enter into what we call the beginning of illusion, with all of its misinterpretations uh, based on the concrete mind, dogma, rigidity, refusal really to think through, the inability to ponder, to meditate. The emotion is swaying everything. And of course, it's so dangerous in the United States at first because this is a country with a six-ray personality, which means there's a lot of six-ray souls. Now, mark what I just said. The country has a six-ray personality, but that means that a lot of six-ray souls are incarnating within the country. And as far as all of humanity concerns, the personality rays of most individual human beings are either the fanatical sixth or the manipulative third. I look at it in the worst case. Of course, there are obviously very good qualities, necessary qualities coming out of either one. We had our discussion about the science of triangles, and we did a little bit on the horoscope of Martin Luther King. Probably, an initiate of the third degree on the sixth ray. There's an example. I've been to the mountain and the great idealism and oratory and so forth, the sixth ray. So, there's a very high example. And Einstein and others of his ilk are high examples of the third ray, But these rays can be easily misused, and they are often in the way and are responsible for fanatical adherence to conspiracy theories. That's our, whether the former president of the United States fades from view or does not fade from view, his selfish philosophy, if you can call it a philosophy, his selfish tendencies remain. And he has given the people an excuse to adhere. He's let the beast out of the cage. He's given them an excuse to adhere to the 666 and think that they are patriots for doing so. So it's a great reprehensible act that he's responsible for, but behind him, of course, as Master Moria says, stand the gray ones, and then the darker gray ones, and then those that are spiritually, in that sense, blackened by their selfishness. So it's an attack, and we have 4 years before the great conclave to do everything we can internally, esoterically, to try to offset these tendencies from certain beings that are much more powerful than we are. You know, they have they're initiates of a kind from an earlier cycle, and they have tremendous knowledge about how to manipulate. So, you know, we're outclassed in that sense, except that the hierarchy of light and love and power stand behind people such as ourselves. I'd like to actually begin with, again, with Great Invocation number 2, because we can justifiably call upon the Lords of Liberation at this point. Tui and I are thinking that during the impeachment efforts coming up, which I don't think any of us have to be taking personally, it's a question of values, that we would like to have our meditation, again, some kind of vigil, in which we emphasize the harmony of the different branches of government in the United States and the necessity for people who are making our laws to stand on principle rather than cravenly, cowardly hope for their next election, no matter who elects them. You know, so it's a real test for so many. And some are being brave. Some on the red side, as it were, are putting the country before their own election prospects. And, you know, we can't really judge what that really means. They're giving up, many of them, you know, they're endangering their livelihood, you know, their bread and butter, their, you know, their prominence, their ambitions. They're putting the country first. Not too many, but a few, and maybe more can grow. So to watch the way the impeachment trial is held is, I think, important, because we can, you know, lend our esoteric presence to the idea that principle should prevail. And are we entitled to invoke the Lords of Liberation in this process? I would say so, because, you know, it really is a question of liberating humanity from the predations of its dweller on the threshold, and aligning that dweller with the angel of the presence so that it becomes truly an instrument and not an impediment. So let's just begin together with, you know, as we have in the past, with Great Invocation number 2. Then we'll get into some of the reading, and then we'll get into our meditation for the day. Let the Lords of Liberation issue forth. Let them bring succor to the sons of men. Let the rider from the secret place come forth, and coming save. Come forth, O Mighty One. Let the souls of men awaken to the light, and may they stand with massed intent. Let the fiat of the Lord go forth. The end of woe has come. Come forth, O mighty one. The hour of service of the saving force has now arrived. Let it be spread abroad, O mighty one. Let light and love and power and death fulfill the purpose of the coming one. The will to save is here. The love to carry forth the work is widely spread abroad. The active aid of all who know the truth is also here. Come forth, O mighty one, and blend these three. Construct a great defending wall. The rule of evil now must end. So these days, I think all this begins on February the 8th, and in just a few days. It's not that we necessarily expect there will be a conviction, but we do expect there will be an exposure, a very embarrassing exposure, which will force, to a degree, the party representing Mars into possibly a more reasonable position. And who knows, maybe things will evolve so that there can be a prevention from that selfish little psyche from holding positions of power again. By the way, I want to say I'm grateful for your presence and to welcome Anne and Anne Veronica and Aurea and Catherine, Karen, Lynette, Mariana, Miro, Natni, Olivia, Rebecca, Risto, Stacia, Tia, and Tuya, of course, she's here with me always, and Vincent. Thank you for being here. I know that in America it's pretty early right now, pretty early in the morning, except on the West Coast, and even then it's late. All right, so we've been looking at the technique which is used to dispel glamour, technique of the presence, and he's going to kind of outline 5 stages for us as a little segue from the past. He's going to list those stages, and we already discussed the stage of the evocation, of the stage of tension. So that's a beautiful phrase really here, fitted for contact with the real. So many of us are unfit at various times of the day for contact with the real, and even Alice Bailey was too. I told you he couldn't work with her sometimes because she just had too much lower manus on her mind. Well, you can imagine all the responsibilities she had, but he needed the abstract mind and the intuition to work in order to work with her. So we have to fit ourselves for contact with the real. Then the second stage that we examined was the achieving of a stage of fusion with the soul and with or with the angel who guards the path, guards the approach to the path of high revolution. And there are those wonderful old commentary sections in esoteric psychology too. We'll have to take them up sometime. I've already done a video commentary on them, but just maybe to discuss them on the different rays, how to approach the angel on the different rays, and all from the old commentary, very beautiful and very powerful. So achieving that state of fusion with the soul. Now, so many people that are simply on the clockwise wheel, it's not yet the reverse wheel, they're not going to worry about this at all. It's not part of their modus operandi, and they don't know and they don't care. But maybe we can do a little something to help them be aware. We have our teaching responsibility. You know, no matter what the ray, every member of the hierarchy, because of the great synthetic second ray, is a teacher. And as well, DK has said, and every member of the hierarchy is also an esoteric psychologist to a degree. See, I mean, certain rays may emphasize that, but every master, every high initiate is somehow understanding something about esoteric psychology, even if they don't put it in the words the Tibetan has used, which are very technical and precise. And then the third point we discussed was the holding of the mind steady in the light of the soul. And that our lower self, which is an important part of all this, which is in a sense the soul and incarnation, just keeps that attitude. And we have to learn how to hold a point of tension, which is focused, immovable will. So it's not so much that the personality is doing it. It's more that the part of the soul that is conscious within the personality is holding that point of tension. So, and this is really interesting, that the soul undertakes eventually this holding of the point of tension when the personal self has done its utmost to achieve the desired tension. Now, somewhere he talks about St. Paul and the fourth ray, and the mantra comes out, having done all to stand. So having done everything we can do with the aid of the presence of the soul, then the soul on its own plane takes over and the inner warrior emerges. Because we are all human beings and we're on the fourth ray still, each of us has to be aware that there is an inner warrior, whatever our ray may be. Of course, if we have a fourth ray soul, it's so much more the case, and they are coming into incarnation. So these steps have to precede everything, which helps to develop the intuition. And he says it may take a while here for that to happen. Let us not assume, let us not presume that we have done this, because words are one thing and the actual experience is another. So whether it takes several months, maybe if you're already practiced in this from other lives, or even years, careful preparation. I've been just doing a lot of work in a book that I love very much, Letters on Occult Meditation, and I've been sending it to BL, or she has been putting them up on the Makara website. And believe me, you will profit from a review if you haven't, if it's been a while since you've read it, or if you've never read it. Letters on Occult Meditation, written 100 years ago, almost exactly 100 years ago, is a tremendous foundation, and it's one of its great messages is careful preparation, careful gradual preparation, a kind of policy that in these emotionally turbulent times, many of us may not adhere to. But DK lays it all out, and calmer times are coming. And he tells us that occultism is moving to the West, and the unsettled atmosphere of the West at the moment, well, it's unsettled everywhere, is preventing true occult study and true occult meditation. But that's going to subside, and a quieting down will occur. And, as in the Bible and different writings, the peace of that symbolic 1,000 years will descend upon humanity once the Armageddon battle is won, and we're still in the middle of it psychologically. So careful preparation. And then that gets us into something that Raja Yoga prepares us for, which is our next reading. There are 6 more points. So we had to stop last time. You can't do them all at once. But about Agni Yoga, it's not only a first-ray presentation. Master Moria has done much to present it on the first ray, but the Tibetan has presented the Agni Yoga, or the Yoga of Synthesis, or at least begun to do so, on the second ray. So, whatever may be your ray, and my sense is that for many of us, the presentation on the second ray will be more akin to the ray on which we operate. But of course, there has to be a sprinkling of first-ray souls in second-ray groups and a sprinkling of second-ray souls in first-ray groups, just to keep the balance ever since 1925. So then he goes on and says, next come 6 more stages in the technique. And these must be thoroughly understood and form the basis of prolonged brooding. That's the second ray method, right? Prolonged brooding, the pondering, the kind of hovering over until something really emerges, and intelligent reflection. Carried on whilst the daily avocations and duties are being performed, and not carried out, I would say, only at certain set times. So he really does want us to be meditating all day, no question about it, and to have that meditative attitude all day. And that's hard because of the discontinuity of our lives. Maybe some of us know how hard it really is to really stay with that and still be able to function in a manner that is useful within this myopic environment. But we can do it in time. The masters have done it. We can do it. Whatever they have done, even whatever the Christ has done, we can do eventually. And we have to have that confidence. So we brood over these stages and try to maintain the kind of point of tension to which they admit us. And that means we have certain recognitions that we sustain because of the point of tension that we are holding. That whole thing about studying the point of tension, this is a really advanced technique. There's so much that can be said about the point of tension, changing the point of tension, involuntarily losing the point of tension. This is, if we keep this idea in mind, we'll be able to monitor ourselves via the inner monitor, and helpfully. The trained intuitive, or disciple. And there's that word, because that's what Master DK is helping us do, submit ourselves to training, lives ever the dual life of mundane activity and of intense, simultaneous, spiritual reflection. Now, just ask yourself, just for a moment, can you do that? Can I do that? Can we do that? Really, can we do that? We live mundane activity, during which so many of us lose the intense and simultaneous spiritual reflection. We drop our point of attention. It subsides, it goes lower. Or, conversely, we get into these meditative states and then we can't handle the outer work. It's like being so heavenly high you're no earthly good, as it has been said. But there's that duality that we have to sustain. And if the masters sustain it, then we have our signal of what we must do too. So this ability, not retreating to the cave, not, retreating, although, a yogi in a cave can do a lot, says Master Morya, because he is present. A high yogi in a cave is present in all the thoughts that he has, but that, very high stage. This will, however, normally be the outstanding characteristic of the Western disciple, in contradistinction to the Eastern disciple who escapes from life into the silent places and away from the pressures of daily living and constant contact with others. Now, and let's just say, let me get this properly done. And we have done this. DK says, of the people who were in his groups, he says they've spent 1 or 2 lives in a monastery or a convent or, something, whether in the East or in the West. So many of us have been there, actually. And we have led that life of retreat. But this is the past for many of us. And I put in something, get rid of this. This is not belonging there. Errant cut and paste. So we're here in the West, so many of us. And if we're in the East has been, in a way, so westernized that the striving in the East is, in a way, even more Western than the striving in the West. I think, the East has decided that it is advantageous to have many of the advantages that the West has because of its concentration upon the material aspects of life. And occultism is moving to the West. Now, the rays of humanity will be the second and the fourth, and the rays of the West are the second and the fourth. So always look for those parallels. If you find numerical affinity any place in your studies, you know there's a link. And then you can explore that link and new light will break forth. So the task of the Western disciple is much harder. And that which he will prove to himself and to the world as a whole will be still higher. This is to be expected if the evolutionary process means anything. Always, let's say, the second initiation of the past was less demanding than the way the second initiation demands of us today. For instance, the second initiation was an initiation of water. Then, with the coming of the Christ and the Pentecost and the experience in the upper room and so forth, it became an initiation of fire and harder. That is an evolution which we have to expect. So things, the standard becomes higher and higher, and that's more and more difficult for us. But nevertheless, the achievement will be more remarkable and more useful to the divine plan. The Western races, well, groupings, must move forward into spiritual supremacy without obliterating the Eastern contribution. And the functioning of the law of rebirth holds the clue to this and demonstrates the necessity. I think there's going to be huge changes. The Christ is going to teach reincarnation, we're told, one of his major teachings. And it will make a huge difference in how people conduct themselves. The old saying, you make your bed and then you lie in it. No one's going to come along and tidy everything's up. I mean, you've made it, and it's there when you go back to sleep. If you plant a tree, it's there when you return. So we are participants in the future, which millions do not believe, or if they do believe we are participants, it's not going to be here on Earth. It's going to be in some kind of fatuous, ill-conceived heaven, some kind of material paradise, which is spiritually materialistic. All of that has to change. People have to really learn how to think accurately, as accurately as possible. And this is what Master DK has been able to convey. Just this incredible power of synthetic thought. And we, being associated with him for training, have to do our little bit to convey the light, to be light bearers so that people who are all wrapped up in these emotional reactions can begin to emerge. As DK says, we often have to tell the children of the race, if you will only use your mind, if you will only think, stop reacting, use your mind, think. And it's a tough hill to climb sometimes, but we persist. The tide of life moves from the east to the west as moves the sun, except of course if you're down in Australia or New Zealand, it appears to go the opposite way. But anyway, here in the north, and those who in past centuries struck the note of Eastern mysticism, and isn't that so many of us, must strike and are now striking the note of Western occultism. Now there is a dynamite sentence and a sentence of guidance for every one of us who is anxious, eager to carry on with spiritual progress, not only for ourselves, but for our groups and for humanity as a whole. And those who in past centuries, and we'll be able to retrace this, between lives, we'll be able to see at least a few lives back, and those who in past centuries struck the note of Eastern mysticism must strike and are now striking the note. I mean, he's talking about spiritual numerals here. He's talking about a type of vibration. Must strike and are now striking the note of Western occultism. That's what we're doing. I remember at one point more than 50 years, well, 50 years ago it was for me. I had a Bailey book with me. It had just fallen off the shelf at Edyar or Wheaton or I forget what it's called there, or Olcott. It was, the big library in Wheaton, Illinois, and it just kind of hit me on the head. And I took it with me someplace. And then I saw that the Arcane School was offering training in discipleship. And it was such a revelation that this kind of training could come, having read much of the book I had, probably a psychology book, and being very excited by it, of course, and then to think that you could be further trained in all of this. Yes, it's moving to the West, and many of us, having been in the East or in the Western mystical tradition, are now advantageously presented with real occultism, spiritual occultism. Therefore, the following stages must follow upon the three earlier, and we will continue with the numbering as given for what I suggest is a formula for a more advanced meditative attitude. I said not form. Yes, there are set forms. But here he speaks of a method um, of orientation. Okay, so these follow upon the earlier three that we just reviewed when we began discussing just this morning here in Finland. So let's at least do a few of them. And what I did before was I made it a certain color, definite and sustained effort to sense the presence throughout the universe in all forms and in all presentations of truth. Now that's sounding a lot like isolated unity, to me anyway. Maybe it does to you also. So having aligned with the soul, having sensed ourselves infused with the soul, having sustained the ability to hold the mind steady in the light of the soul, this sensing of the presence, technique of the presence it's called, right? So when we have our identify as being some study groups, meditations, it's really a blend. This sensing of the presence behind and within and as all forms is key. And, one of the little techniques that I've evolved is when you're looking at something externally or internally, don't move your eyes. Why? Because the minute you move your eyes, you break up unity into multiplicity, into parts and pieces. So I concentrate upon something that is immovable, like Parmenides, in the pre-Socratic philosophers. There is no movement. The minute there is movement from thing to thing, we have already used the factor of division. And we become preoccupied with what we have divided the unity into. So if we just remain fixed, attentive, still, and focused on the gestalt, the wholeness that presents itself, we're a lot more likely to sense through the heart, especially, and our chain of hearts, we're much more likely to sense the presence. Technique of the presence, dispelling illusion. Illusion based upon division. There is no division. There's only myopic division, which is practical, of course. And everything is divided from everything else, apparently. But fundamentally, in the presence is one, there's no division. So, number 4, definite and sustained effort to sense the presence throughout the universe, in all forms and in all presentations of truth. Now, those are words. And until some recognition comes, which is real, then they remain words. So our job is to make sure that words are backed by experience. This could be expressed, he says, in the words, the effort to isolate the germ or seed of divinity, which has brought all forms into being. You understand that each one of these sentences is really spiritual dynamite, you know. These are great sentences upon which to ponder. The seed of divinity is within every perception. And every perception exists because the seed of divinity has germinated. And I think of the word existence and being. So for me anyway, being um, it results or brings forth existence. Is that at all meaningful? Because the word ex means out there, and being is internal. So to me, the germ or seed of divinity is being. The germ or seed of divinity is being. Well, you know, these are subtle definitions. And when our mind becomes discriminating regarding higher states of awareness, then these discriminations will mean something. They're starting to mean something to me, you know, and I've been at it for a long time. So don't, you know, expect anything overnight, of course, depending upon how much work you've done in previous incarnations. I would point out, says the Tibetan, that this is not the attainment of a loving attitude and a sentimental approach to all people and circumstances, because, you know, uh, in Rule 10, no, Rule 11, he eliminates sentiment right off the bat. Sentiment and strictly personal ties to other people in your group and so forth. That kind of attitude is good, but it develops out of deeper things. So that is the mystical way, you know, with the sort of center of attention being above the head instead of having moved down into the head. around the pineal gland. He discriminates that way. So that is the mystical way, and though not intended to be negated in the disciple's life, see, I mean, it's a piece of things, is not used at this time in the process of effective approach. The DK is teaching us new things. He's teaching us an occultism which is useful for the Western disciple. And it involves a new approach to discipleship, even though, he's writing 100 years ago, last time, whatever, or 90 or 80 years ago. It's still new. It's a new approach to discipleship. There's so many people that still, they haven't even stepped onto the mystical path yet. We can help with all that. We can help with all that. The more experienced have to help the less experienced, even as we are helped by someone with the vast experience of a master decay. It is the effort primarily to see in the light which the angel radiates, the point of light behind all phenomenal appearances. Now, in the Kabbalah, however you want to spell it, it's just there's just so many ways to spell that word. The universe is light. Light is, no, that's not correct, is substance. Light is substance. So basically, we're all light units. And this is well, if we want to, get closer to what it really is, it's the light of life itself. And shambolic light, which is unfettered, is a lesser example of it. That blinding light of Shambhala, the dark light of Shambhala. But of course, it goes way beyond that. So the angel is radiating light. And the angel introduces us to a still greater light. The angel introduces us to a still greater light. We have, the light of the soul. So first the light of the soul, and then the light of life itself. Of course, none of that is ultimate reality. So that's why, in a sense, the one about, the greatest of all beings, non-beings, is in a way in the dark, the utter darkness of spirit. There is no light per se when it comes to the absolute. There's no thing, but that's another matter. So, as we study what the angel can do, we come en rapport with our angel. All of us have one, even if we were individualized on the moon chain or elsewhere where the angel did not intervene. By the time we got to the earth chain, it's my impression that a solar angel was assigned to us, or that took up our case, as it were. Otherwise, the Tibetan somewhere says that we would be in such a retarded condition compared to where even less experienced members of humanity now stand. So many of us may not have individualized with the help of a solar angel or angel of the presence. But in this fourth chain, however we got here, the angel has attached itself. And then we become, like Madame Blavatsky says, like hothouse plants, specially cultivated. And there still are human beings for whom this is not yet the case, and it will be more the case in the fifth round. It's all a question of experience. You want to look at the real individual, look at the causal body. You want to look at the degree of unfoldment, whether you're a child soul or a teenage soul or a mature soul or a master soul. It has a lot to do with what cycle you came in on and how you've used your opportunities or not. I remember reading that from Manly Hall, many, many years ago, and I said, "You mean I'm responsible for all this?" Okay. It was a revelation at the time. By the way, about Manly Hall, great teacher, wonderful teacher. Somebody is having their mute. Make sure you mute yourself, please. Mute yourself. Um, because otherwise we get extra sound. Uh, the last time I saw Manly Hall, and the only time I met him in person, I remember being in his house with a couple of my colleagues who knew him better than I. And, he was going out of the room. He had an interview with us, and he turned in the doorway and he said to me, "Do good things, help people." Whoa. So simple, so simple. And then that was it. And, that's the last time I ever saw him. And, he was really an advanced soul, but that's a watchword uh, to me. And, probably in your own life, impressive things are said or impressive moments occur with great simplicity. And you remember and you are guided accordingly. Okay, so we're, just going to really finish number 4. There's a lot to be said. This is therefore the transference of the mystical vision to the higher levels of awareness. We might say from vision to revelation. It is not the vision of the soul, but the vision or the spiritual sensing of that which the light of the soul can aid in revealing, and that is the presence. The presence is what we really are. So it's not just a vision. It's that sense of what is the revelation behind the vision. That's what is accorded to us. Okay. The flickering soul light in the personal self. Notice, he's just shown us something. He's shown us something about the presence of the soul in incarnation within the personality. That's a very important little phrase. The flickering, and who can say that it's anything but flickering? The flickering soul light in the personal self, okay, has enabled the disciple to see the vision of the soul, and in that light to reach union with the soul, even if only temporarily, and that is a big achievement. Okay, that's a big achievement. And I don't think any of us can say we're all the way there yet. Because if we were, we'd be ready for the fourth initiation. Now, the greater light of the soul, in that light we shall see light. The greater light of the soul becomes focused like a radiant sun, and it reveals in its turn a still more stupendous vision, that of the presence of which the angel is the guarantee and promise. These are dynamite sentences of the higher process that all of us are in process of undertaking as we are building the Antakarana. Now the greater light of the soul. See, the old mantra works. In that light we shall see light. Okay, now the greater light of the soul becomes focused like a radiant sun. He even talks about sometimes the light in the head. He talks in these terms, although it's not necessary to have that light in the head in a phenomenal way, he tells us. Focused like a radiant sun, and it reveals not just the soul light and the personality self as the revealer. This time it's the soul itself that is the revealer. It reveals in its turn a still more stupendous vision, that of the presence. Then we ask ourselves, has the presence been revealed to us? The old Jesuits, they practiced the presence of God and all that. It had, certain trappings of a Christian nature, which maybe we wouldn't use now in spiritual occultism, but really sit down with yourself, and daily, has the presence been revealed in our consciousness? The angel is the guarantee and promise of the presence. Now get the sequence, the flickering light of the soul in the personality, the angel of the presence itself, and the angel of the presence as the revealer of the presence, and especially following the third initiation. But already, it's starting to grow. As the light of the moon is the guarantee that the light of the sun exists, so the light of the sun is the guarantee, did you but know it, of a still greater light. And I suppose, that has something to do with the heart of the sun, or the soul nature of the logos, or even the monadic nature of our solar logos. Beautiful analogies, wonderful analogies, and guidance of the kind of thing we should look for as we work spiritually to enter greater and greater light, which, of course, as potential light bearers, we attempt to take to other people who may be, ready. If you try to talk to somebody who's totally unready, the Christ has pretty well said it, in very graphic words about casting your pearls and having them rent underfoot and thrown back in your face, basically. But okay, we have to try, and sometimes we will make mistakes, and we will talk to people that we really shouldn't be talking to, because at least about those things, and all of that is occult silence as well. We have to learn when it is appropriate to speak and when it is not appropriate to speak. But if we're ever on the lookout for opportunity, we will find uh, moments when we can indeed speak. So this is ending of program number 172. And, well, you know, Tuya and I are going to try to keep the glamour work going weekly. It's not listed yet weekly, but that'll be our intention. Although when we do the vigil meditation coming up for this whole process of principle called impeachment, there'll be plenty of the glamour meditation involved in that. So this is, and this was a morning presentation.
Michael.
Yes, Tuya.
Are you sure it is so what you said?
Not
Because
exactly
I
sure.
think, yeah, I think there is glamour has been marked for every week.
Maybe it should be, or you know, and we'll just have to check, and you and Ann will know. And I'm not sure when the next. I'm just going to make a question mark here. And
I will check now from the calendar.
okay,
A few
very good.
seconds.
So this is good. Okay. All right. So, and then we go on from page 181. You can understand this little book, Glamour a World Problem, meant to train the seed group number 2, is a gold mine. And the more we study Master DK, it's just like everything he's given to us is a gold mine. You know, a lot of people are doing historical research, and I think that's good. And, you know, what's left out of the books and what's included. And they spend their time hunting for what's left out. And those were deliberate decisions by Alice Bailey and the editorial staff and by the students themselves who did or didn't want their certain particular information revealed. And they had that prerogative. But basically, if I was going to say, you know, and that our opportunity, given what Master DK has given, is to absorb 1 or 2% of it when it's already been given, and 1 or 2% absorption is the likelihood. I'm not meaning to be depressing, because that can be an asymptotic curve which can rise very rapidly, and we can absorb more and more and more rapidly, yes. But I am saying we have been given more than we can ever absorb. And so when it comes to the 4 years that lie ahead of us before the Great Conclave, we have our assimilative duties. Let's get it in now and digest it the best we can, and let's study like we never have before, and meditate more deeply than we ever have before, and apply in esoteric group fashion more successfully than we ever have before. Okay, Tuya, have you come up with anything?
Yes, it is marked for every week.
It is there. Okay.
Absolutely. And I tried to, now I am on my mobile. I will go to the computer and I'll try to send now a copy of the calendar, if I manage to do that. Is there Michael Crow?
No, there's just you and
Okay.
I.
Okay, I tried to do that if I
Okay.
can.
Okay, that'd be great. Okay, terrific.
Oh yeah, I can send.
Oh, there's Anne. Okay.
Thank you, and please do that. At least, and you can send also the link for the calendar, but please do that. Thank you.
We're very grateful to Tuya and Ann for creating these weekly and monthly calendars, and, you know, to Michael Stacy, who has done so much in the past to help with that process. But now he's writing his big book on over 400 laws that the Tibetan has talked about. So we look forward to the outcome of what he will produce, you know. Okay, so let's see. It's time you have the floor, and yeah, okay, good. So we see it. Now, Tuya, do you want to help me here, or you
Help you in which way?
the what we find from people? So glamour is the next week, and look, I'll tell you what, friends, this is the big problem. What we're going to be meditating on. That's the big problem. And the fact that people are so gullible and so misled, and they can't think, and they have violent emotional reactions, and they're reacting to a non-sacred planet Mars instead of the great synthetic planet Jupiter. So, we'll
My,
probably stick with this. Yeah, dear, go ahead.
I just wanted to note, because of this blind reaction, I absolutely think it is because of the Shambhala impact. It is how one part at least is it, because humanity has not learned the way how to respond to this first ray energy.
That's right.
And when we think, you see so similar things going on, like in Myanmar, the same reason. Army took over because they accused that election was stolen. You see that the same idea going on in different parts of the different countries, and so there must be, because of these ending times. When you study the time of the Jesus and Christ, the same thought form was
Yeah,
that there is coming the threat from the other party or threat from the other king. So it's interesting to study that.
yeah,
And I was just thinking why Tibetan is talking that this time was so important that Taraki has been waiting for. Did he say thousands of years? I think so.
oh, from the very beginning of its establishment, the whole creation groaneth and travaileth, awaiting for the manifestation of the sons of God. So this is a climactic time, even from the establishment of hierarchy. It is
And
the
that
change
is if, yes, if
change of
that is
kingdoms.
so.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
if that is so.
Yeah,
So one may think it just these general terms that how humanity is evolving, but if we think exactly these times what we are living now, we have to talk about this in our group progress series.
good point.
That because it gives us a lot of understanding how important it is for us to work and to
Yeah,
study, become clear how one is able to work with the glamours and how one is able to work really in oneself with in the meditations, in
yes,
different ways of meditations and of integration techniques. But then when you think what happened during the time of Jesus, that John the Baptist lost his head. And I am thinking, yeah, I'm thinking and thinking, what does it mean? Because in one sense, his life was cut and his possibility to work was cut. I think that there are dangerous energies which are also what I don't think it is going to happen, but I think that it is a danger in this time if disciples are not able to now stand up together uh, in order to keep these energies balanced. They will come and they have to come because humanity has to learn to use these type of energies. And Pluto is one of the things to look at.
yeah,
But
yeah,
this time, that's why it is, in my opinion, also fascinating because we have now situation created that we can really put our occult efforts forward and rehearse them. but I do not think that it is decided or seen yet, because humanity is so much responding to these clamors. And when we study and look the leaders, we should look more for the people. I think that it is in the tendency in humanity to look the leader and accuse leaders like they are the ones. No, it is the people who are
Yeah.
the ones,
Yeah.
and the people has to create the correct way. And if that is happening, then there is no possibility to any leader to function.
Yeah, that's correct. Public opinion will then hold sway and will not allow such leaders to emerge. Look, there's no question that to be a true member of the new group of world servers at this time will become an increasing danger uh, to that group, just with the analogy of John the Baptist. And that of course has to be protected, the group John the Baptist. DK said the time may come when such people, and he got very specific, will even be attacked in their homes, he said. So, as the proper method, the principled method is held forth as the way for humanity to go, the counterforce will attack. We have to be ready for
Mm.
that, and we have to be very much together so that
Well,
we,
there is,
yeah,
right.
yeah. Go ahead, Mary.
If we think about what happened in Russia at the moment, so
Yeah,
that
exactly.
there was not in this law process or suit process was not even cared to um, how do you say in English, mark this process to be seen like under law. So that when you see that in the general court cases, there is no interest to care about the law, that
Right.
one just
Well,
makes up whatever.
yeah,
And these are the things that we have to look how law is used. Of course, we know that all over the planet there is so much corruption in it that those who keep the powers, they read the law however they want. But it is that if there is not enough in people the will that this kind of thing must end, and
yeah,
if there in our group, if disciples are not keeping the invocation open, constant invocation and constant spiritual demand,
yes,
that this way we do not accept, because that is our right.
yeah,
So
exactly.
so so these 4 years we have to look every single sign now how the group is going to be treated.
Yeah,
I still think we are wise enough, but if we see all over this kind of things growing, they are signs for us that the powers in the inner planes are so close on the physical plane that we have to be alert, very, very alert at the moment.
agreed. Look, there's no way we're going to avoid the withering of the law. It happens at the end of every age. Whenever there is a withering of the law and an uprising of lawlessness on all sides, then I manifest myself, O Arjuna, for the salvation of the righteous and the destruction of such as do evil. That's the basic idea. And look, a 250,000 year, that's a huge amount, right? A 250,000 year cycle ended when Christ made his appearance in Palestine 2,000 years ago. It's an entirely new thing now. And that, cyclically, it's a time of great importance. How many of those 250,000 year cycles have there been? Maybe four um, during the Aryan Age. We don't know the history of all that, but it's all due to the cycles. And here we are right now in the transition phase, into a much greater 25,000 year cycle of Aquarius, okay? But still, a still larger cycle has ended, which is momentous for the moving of humanity into the fifth kingdom. So these are interesting times to be living in, and we know some from our occult training of what we can do. Now, let's see, dear. We have maybe a few people having said something or would like to say something. Do we have that? Um, okay, so here is.
Michael, because I am on my mobile and I
Okay,
tried to see, yeah,
I can
if
see
you
it.
can
So
do that.
Olivia is saying here, dissipating glamour is so important in helping humanity, which is plagued by it. Indeed so. Master DK has given us this key esoteric formula and how beneficial it is when we use it. Yeah. Well, of course, three techniques really being given. And the technique of light is maybe that's the one we use, is the most usable. We can also deal with the technique of indifference for Maya and uh, it's the technique of the presence, which we're learning about here for some of the higher illusory issues. But in a way, they all come under the word glamour. He's using it in the larger sense. And we have our occult techniques. So the work of visualization, the work of color, uh, the work of spreading certain energies in difficult areas of the world, yes, we absolutely have to continue. And we do. And we do. Now, is there anybody that would like to say something before we say something or write something before we get into our meditation? And let's see, I have to look and see if there's anybody that would like to do that. Someone turned themselves on, so um, is there somebody that wishes to speak? I think we all get what we're doing. I think it's clear. I'm trying to handle this at the same time. So look, if not, if you don't have something you want to write down, and you don't have something that you want to say, then we'll get right into this very heavy glamour. Oh, here's one new message. I shared today with a friend coming home to find a decapitated rat. Whew, on my front doorstep. Very troubling. Thank you for raising that issue. It is comforting. Well, look, when people don't understand something, you go back to what Jesus said, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. There's just abundant ignorance everywhere. When we've got, people hunting through the Capitol to kill uh, what's her name? AOC, Cortez, the young woman who's so vibrant. And when we have people looking to shoot Nancy Pelosi in the head, and when we have people who mean to hang the Vice President Mike Pence, we know that the guardrails are going off. And these are people who are just trying to carry forth their duty and their oath to the government and to the Constitution. So we know that people will get crazy. And we know from the book of Revelation that there is a period called the tribulation. And really what it amounts to is the precipitation of the lower levels of the astral plane obsessively onto the physical plane. And that's a very dangerous thing, and predicted, prophetically and probably accurate. It's part of the Plutonic cleansing prior to the reappearance of the Christ. So Master Moria warned, there is an epidemic of obsession, he said. That epidemic, it's reasserting itself. The masses of people are suffering from an epidemic of obsession, manipulated by very dark forces. So, yes, we have to expect that there is danger, risk, in being a member of the new group of world servers at this time. No evading it. It's just there. But, we'll stick together and we'll handle it the best we can. Yeah, so that was from Tia. And I think so. I read it out loud, even though, it was, it's the kind of thing that this crazy distortion of mind and the emotional reaction to it will produce. And, it's going to call for courage and bravery and sacrifice. And when the road winds uphill all the way. And when we first get into spiritual occultism, we say, oh, look at the magnificent things that are going to happen and of which I can be part. But then there's also the huge burden and responsibility, to which Master Moria says, never making things easier, burden me still more, he says, as I enter the beautiful garden. So it's a challenge as you look within yourself to see, can I take it? Can I stand in spiritual being? Can I be courageous? Can I be daring? We have to question ourselves. Okay, the master calendar is coming forth. Okay, someone's having trouble here with the computer. Do your best. All right, friends, I think we're getting into our meditation now. I think that's what we have to do because time is moving on. And we'll come back and we'll take up point number 5 in this sequence of how to approach the technique of the presence. But there have been some wonderful sentences here. Just review them in the Glamour book or in the program that you'll get, because DK has really told us how to prepare and how the angel introduces us to the presence. It's very potent material. Okay. Now, let's just have some silence. And since there are not too many of us right now for this meditation, I will read the names of the group members. We won't have 10 minutes of silence, but we'll have some. So, Anne, and Veronica, Aurea, Catherine, Gretchen, Karen, Lynette, Mariana, Miro, Natney, Olivia, Risto, Stacia, Tia, Tuya, Vera, Vincent, Zenaide, I'll include myself. We're all coming together in the silence, coming together in some more synthetic relationship. We'll be meditating on the blind emotional reaction to, I'll throw in another word here, manipulative, conspiratorial thinking, if we can call it thinking. Thinking, so to speak. It's very dangerous, and it is the result of the authoritarian personality and the lack of evolution on the part of those who succumb to these glamours and initial illusions. And we'll use the cross of divinity, you know, forehead, heart, left eye, right eye. And we'll identify accordingly to the formula, the protective formula, and believe me, from experience, protection is needed. As a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light, I work, and from that point, I never move. Trace the light, the cross of divinity before each of us and before the entire group. The protective cross. Then we bring together the three lights that we are familiar with. The vital light of matter, light of mind, and light of the soul, all in the mind where we can focus the triple light as one. We visualize bringing the three lights together. And from that light, the soul light joining the lesser two lights, we will be able to penetrate the glamours, producing a beam which finds and penetrates the glamour. We have our instrument that dissipates the glamour and reveals a greater light which fills the lower mind and fills the astral vehicle, especially of humanity at this time. And so we say together, and let me make sure the light is one, and in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. Remember, the intuition is called the light of day. Then the formula, which we visualize as we stand between two worlds. And as we visualize this, the great searchlight is thrown out onto the astral plane, and begins to do its work. Radiance are we, and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth. The inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. The world of the soul, the world of meaning. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus, with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. So our beam goes forth into the clouds, miasmas, veils, blankets, crusts, whatever we want to call that which prevents the higher points of tension from reaching the lower. And we strengthen our beam with spiritual will. First, attune with the will, through willingness, and we visualize the strengthening of our being with this mantra, with power upon its beam. The light is focused on the goal. And our goal is the dissipation of blind emotional reaction to manipulative, conspiratorial, so-called thinking. So sad to see, because you'd think maybe humanity had outgrown it, but millions upon millions represent the unredeemed dweller on the threshold. And in this case, it's the first initiation that's coming. But until this glamour can be broken, there can be no first initiation for humanity, at least partially broken. Blind, terribly destructive emotional reaction to manipulative, conspiratorial, so-called thinking. The mob. Indeed, it has to begin with the people, and then the leaders will appear accordingly. So let us use these words of power. The power of our united light prevents even the appearance of this glamour of blind emotional reaction to conspiracy thinking. The power of our united light negates the quality of this glamour from affecting humanity. power of our united light destroys the life, vitality behind this glamour of blind emotional reaction to manipulative, conspiratorial thinking. We'll spend our 5 minutes in silence visualizing our beam penetrating into the glamour, producing its weakening and dissipation. 5 minutes of silence and intensity of purpose as the work proceeds. course, you're left to your own imagination as you see this dissipation occurring. But somehow, in general, in the midst of all the clouds and vapors, the sun must come out. So together now we withdraw our beam from the astral plane, including the lower thoughts. We withdraw now, leaving conditions in a better way than we found them, and believing that it is so. And the lights go to where they belong. And we sound the Om 3 times, one each for the improvement of every level of the personality. Okay, friends, we'll continue with this, and whatever little we can do, but it is something, we will do it. And we can't worry about attachment to results. The masters will know whether we have been successful or not, and our job is simply to do as Master DK suggests with this technique of the light. Then maybe we'll also get into the technique of the presence. We'll see. But the technique of the light is perhaps the easiest for us to work with at this time. So I want to thank you all for being here. Now tonight at 6 o'clock, tonight at 6 o'clock, we have a treatise on cosmic fire. In depth, but frankly, what I'm trying to do in these days, weeks, months, and years is to offer the chance to think more synthetically and to experience this world of Maya in which we live in a more synthetic manner. And so no matter what course of study or meditation we're undertaking, Tui and I are trying to present this synthesis so that our grasp, according to Master DK, will be a grasp of synthetic understanding.
Michael,
yes,
I think it is not treatise on cosmic fire. I think it is the group progress.
Oh, okay. Well, good. Well, okay. We have a wonderful compilation on the new group of world servers, and yes, very important theme. Okay, so anyway, if you want to be with us, show up at 6 o'clock p.m. GMT. You're quite right, I'm sure. But anyway, we'll continue with these many offerings, and all I'm trying to say is they all amount to the same thing. to create a synthesis of understanding and correct action in our consciousness and energy system. So it almost doesn't make any difference which program you tune into. The over goal, the super objective, we might say,
Michael, it is group
synthesis.
progress.
It is, yeah. It is group progress. Well, okay, we'll launch into that. Synthesis of understanding we will achieve. Thank you from all of us here in Moria Federation and the Northern Light Society and all the USR activities, etc. We appreciate your presence and lots of love to everybody and many blessings. As soon as BL, is awakened, I mean, because, it's the middle of the night there, she'll put this up on Makara and you'll be able to either refer to it or advise friends that they can take advantage of it. Please do that as well. Spread the word because there's so much in Master DK which can benefit so many people. We'll be in touch with you in just another 10 hours. Bye for now.